Hi, this is Talking Hands, and I want to bring back something that I just don't really see a lot on YouTube anymore, and that is the instructional videos when it comes to firearms. Most videos now you see they're just either reviewing a new gun or a new optic, or basically trying to sell you something, or I mean, there's nothing wrong with those because those are actually very useful. I watch those also before I decide whether or not I want to buy something, so they're useful, but um, I guess it's because of the new rules with YouTube that when you show a function of a firearm that they get demonetized. I'm not really worried about that because my channel is too small to be monetized anyway. So I I'm going to show you some instructional videos from here on out. And the very first one is the most important one and the first one that you need to see and you need to know before you start doing anything with firearms, and that is safety. Because obviously, firearms they're not toys. They are dangerous tools, and they need to be respected and treated safely. So firearm safety is definitely the number one thing, and that's the first video I'm going to make for you today. Really quickly, just going to go over the basic firearm safety rules. The first rule is that you treat every firearm as if it's loaded. The second rule is you keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. The third one is to not point your weapon at anything you're not willing to destroy. And then the fourth rule is you have to know your target and what's beyond it. So regarding the first rule, treat every firearm as if it's loaded. So even if it's a firearm that's on a display case from a firearm store, they don't usually keep those loaded, or somebody hands you a gun, or you're at the gun range and they have the guns out and everything like that, and they say, yeah, don't worry about it, that's unloaded. They hand it to it's unloaded, or you're at the gun shop, they give you the gun, you just assume it's unloaded. Don't ever assume that it's unloaded and start treating it that way. The first thing it's to do, and it's a good habit, is to check it. And you would notice when, like, the difference between somebody who's been formally trained, either through law enforcement, military, or even just some civilian training programs. People can take, NRA instructors, things like that, and other people who haven't been formally trained. They could be experienced, but they're not trained. They could be been shooting for 20, 30 years because, from the family down, taught by their dad, things like that. You will see the difference, and the difference is that when somebody's been formally trained, you'll notice that even if the person that's giving them the gun has cleared it and he's sitting right there watching him clear it, the moment he gets a hold of it, he clears it himself, he checks it himself also. And you'll see, like, if that gun gets passed around, every person will check it. You would think, why would you check it so many times? Is ammo going to magically, load in there in between one of these handoffs? Yeah, no, probably not, but it's a habit, and it's a good habit. When you do that for those situations where it's very unlikely for a gun to be loaded, but you're still checking it, then you're definitely going to check it in those times where something might actually happen and it gets loaded. You don't get complacent and you just don't check it because you're used to not checking. So when you get used to checking in every situation, even those situations where it's unlikely, and the situations where there's a good chance that it could be loaded, you're still checking it, so you're playing it safe, basically. All right, so that's with the first rule, treating every firearm as if it's loaded, and even after you checked it, you still don't start goofing around with it and everything like that. And then the second rule, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. And with that one, you see, a lot of people, they hold their guns like this, with their fingers straight and on the side of the frame, something like that. And you see the rifle same way. They'll grip the pistol grip, or whatever grip that's on there, and they keep the finger off the trigger. So that's basically what that rule means. It's only after you're aiming down the sights and you acquire the target, then you move your finger to the trigger before when you're ready to fire. Now you see a lot of movies, and please never use movies as a means of learning anything about guns, because movies do a lot of things wrong. Okay, because it's more about style when it comes to movies. I'm not like criticizing. A lot of it's about style. It's not really about like accuracy. They're not a documentary to try to teach you firearm safety. So don't go by movies, because you see every movie that, I guess they think it looks cooler. They always have the finger on the trigger and everything in the posters, whatever. And at all moments when they're holding a gun, their finger is on the trigger. So don't go by that. You have to keep your finger off the trigger, until you're ready to fire. And then with the third rule, with never pointing it at anything you're not willing to destroy. Now, before you guys flood my comments with, oh, what if you're cleaning it, or, your hand is going to get in front of the barrel, or, do I intend to shoot this wall next to me? Of course not, okay? Let's not nitpick on those, little technicalities of it. Just think about the spirit of that rule, okay? Obviously, I don't mean to shoot the wall here, but imagine if magically there's a round in here, even though, I cleared it earlier, things like that. And even without my finger on the trigger, it just decides the round just magically wants to go off. Yeah, it's going to make a hole in my wall, but, at least it's not a hole in your foot, a hole in your head, or a hole in your friend's head. You know what I mean? So just kind of understand the purpose of the rule. Obviously, there's always going to be some exceptions, and it might not apply 100% technically, but still, the rule is to not point at anything that you're not willing to destroy. So even after you clear it, don't goof around and point the gun at your friends, things like that. Keep when you're at the gun range, you want to keep it pointed down range. And a lot of gun ranges have rules like that too. So it's also to keep you from getting kicked out. So not only just safety, but also that, okay? And when it comes to the fourth rule, know your target and what's beyond it, this applies to recreational shooting. Let's say you live out in the country and you could shoot in your backyard, but even though you intend to shoot your target, so the first, three rules you're following and you're shooting at that target. Now with the fourth rule, if your target is behind the target is a big open field that people can randomly walk across at any time, then it's no longer safe. Even though you do intend to shoot that target, you don't intend to shoot what might be behind it. So you got to think about, do you have a proper berm, something that will stop the ammo behind the target? And even in a self-defense situation, something happens if, the bad guy's standing here and right behind the bad guy is some lady holding a baby. You have to kind of think about things like that. I do understand that things happen so fast in those situations that maybe you can't stop and think, but it should be something that's in the back of your mind, in all situations, to know your target, what's behind it before you start shooting.
While editing this, I realized I completely skipped the actual know your target part of know your target and what's beyond it, and have only addressed the beyond it part. So obviously the first thing is to know your target. This means to ID your target. In a self-defense shooting, don't just shoot at a shadowy figure in your house. You hear a noise downstairs, you investigate. Invest in a good weapon light or even a handheld flashlight. Definitely identify your target before you engage it. While it doesn't happen as often as the media and the anti-gun politicians would have you believe, people shooting their own family accidentally this way does happen. Don't become a statistic. Use a light, make sure it's an intruder that you're shooting, identify the target. That's the know your target part. Well, continuing on.
Now, regarding treating every firearm as if it's loaded and how to clear it, how to properly clear it, I want to go over that with you today. And now, to properly clear it, a lot of people think that as long as you do all the steps, it's okay. But it's actually very important that you do all the steps in this order. Okay, the order of clearing the firearm is actually very, very important. Okay, and the order is as follows. So the first thing you do is to remove the source of the ammunition. So if it's a semi-auto, pistol, or a rifle, you're basically removing the magazine. These are snap caps. I don't have any live ammo here while I'm doing this demonstration in my house. I don't want to blow any holes in my wall or my ceiling or anything like that, right? So these are snap caps in here. So, like I said, the first step is to remove the source of ammunition. And of course, with the revolver is all one step, because you're basically opening cylinder and removing the ammo. And that kind of covers the second step, which is what I'm about to get to right now. So after you remove your source of ammunition, the second step is you then open up the action You know, if it's a rifle, you open up the bolt, or with this, you open up the slide, and you physically look into the chamber. Now, the reason why you don't just open it and you don't see anything ejecting, so you assume everything's good. Yes, the chances of your extractor not properly extracting around is low, but like I said, you want to plan for the worst possible situation. So that's why you physically look into the chamber to make sure that there's nothing, and maybe a round is still stuck in the chamber even though you've opened the slide. So you look inside the chamber and you actually physically make sure that there's nothing there. So now that you follow those 2 steps, you know, you have personally checked that the firearm is clear. And again, this doesn't mean that you can start pointing it at your head or anything like that. Like, that's the other rules still apply. Okay? Now, if you're wondering why it is so important to follow those steps in order, let me show you what happens when you don't follow it in this order.
I got these guns. I have a gun on my side right here. Just this week, at the beginning of the week, a young boy, not even 16 years old, was killed because he was playing with a gun. And see, this is an unloaded gun. Right here, Mr. Cummings. No, empty weapon. Empty weapon. This is a Glock 40. 50 Cent, Too Short, all of them talk about Glock 40. Okay, I'm the only one in this room professional enough that I know of to carry this Glock 40. I'm the only one. Right? No, I'm all right. Is everybody all right?
Yeah, and that is a DEA agent, a trained agent of the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, ironically teaching a firearm safety course in a room full of kids. Okay, so if you imagine that he wasn't pointing it at his foot, which basically that's what happened, he shot himself in the foot. Imagine he wasn't pointing at his own foot and, you know, he was pointing it at one of those kids instead. You know, so it could have easily gone from a situation that we can all laugh at, except for him. He's definitely not laughing, but we're all laughing, okay? Let's be honest. You know, I laugh at him every time anybody I show that video to, we all laugh at him, and he deserved it, okay? So it went from a situation that we can all laugh at, you know, it could have easily went from that to something really tragic that's kind of like, oh no, you know, like some kid lost his life, you know, things like that, you know, or he could have shot himself and more seriously and killed himself, you know, I mean, very easy for something like that to happen. But let me show you, he actually broke several rules, and actually any firearm accident that you hear about and you read about where either somebody gets injured or somebody dies, multiple rules have to be broken for those accidents to happen. If you break any one rule and follow all the other ones, pretty much it's guaranteed nobody's going to die or get seriously injured. Usually you have to break multiple rules for that to happen, and let me go through exactly what he did and what he did wrong and why, you know, following the order and those steps is important. So the very first thing that he does wrong is that he's teaching a firearm safety class and he doesn't bring along with him either a dummy gun or another firearm separate that's been cleared, things like that. He doesn't bring a separate gun as his demonstration piece. He takes his duty gun out of his holster. So that's his number one mistake right there. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him having a gun in his duty holster if he's an on-duty officer, or if I'm teaching a class and I have a concealed firearm. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, some people say that you should not have any live ammunition around, and I understand the concept of that, but you know, I'm not going to criticize if you have a concealed firearm, but don't use it as part of the demonstration. You know, you have something separate that's specifically for the demonstration, right? So that was his first mistake, is pulling his duty gun out of his holster. I guess he must have thought that it would look cooler if he unholsters his gun rather than going into a box and opening it and showing it to the children, right? So that's his first mistake. Now, his second mistake is now he goes to clear the firearm and he doesn't follow those steps in that order. So the first thing he does, instead of removing the magazine from his firearm, The first thing he does instead is he opens the slide and he locks it to the rear. So he's checking the chamber first instead of removing the source of the ammunition. So he opens the slide, he walks over to somebody else. I don't know if that somebody else is trained in firearms or if it's just like a teacher or somebody who doesn't know anything, you know. And he goes, see, oh, so look, it's a clear, safe weapon, right? Safe weapon, right? And he, you know, the person looks inside the gun and be like, yeah, safe weapon. So then he breaks the next rule, which is that he doesn't do that second step at all. He doesn't remove the magazine. He keeps the magazine in there, which, you know, like I said, it's not following the steps and not following them in the right order. So he walks back over after he's verified that the gun is clear, and he drops the slide, you know, and he proceeds to talk about how he's the only one in the room professional enough to handle this, you know, Glock 40, you know, which is, it's not a Glock 40, by the way. It's a Glock 40 caliber, but it's not a Glock 40. So he talks about all this stuff, and then what he does next is he points it down at his foot. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, I don't know if he just wanted to hear the click or what, but then he presses the trigger. Now, like I said, he skipped the second step completely, technically the first step. He skipped one of the steps completely, and he does it in the wrong order. But let's pretend that he does the other step. So after he closes the slide, he removes the magazine, right? So even if he would have done that, which he didn't, but let's pretend, let's give him the benefit of, even if he does that, the result would have been the same, because after he opened the slide, verified the chamber is clear, and then dropped the slide, what happens? There's a round inside the chamber, you know, because he dropped the slide on a full magazine, because he didn't follow the clearing procedure in the right order, okay? So, like I said, fortunately, all he did was shoot himself in the foot and not somebody else, or shoot himself in a more vital area. But yeah, that's why it's very important for you to follow those steps to clear a firearm in that order. You know, one, remove the source of the magazine, source of the ammunition, and then number two, check the chamber, right? And just to go over again, the safety rules, number one, treat every firearm as if it's loaded. Number two, keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. Number three, don't point the firearm at anything that you're not ready to shoot. Number four, know your target and what's beyond it. Okay? Well, that's it for the safety video. Thank you for watching, and I hope this is informative for you, and that, you know, you found this useful.